when you're playing, I feel like nothing is ever good enough. It's hard to have that perspective that, hey, I just won. I really need to give myself a pat on the back, maybe a little steep at the top, or it's bringing it down a little, a little too shallow, or whatever. I'm describing the golf swing, and I'm thinking in my mind as I'm saying it, God, I wish I did this, or I wish I knew that when I was playing. And
What's the difference in the pressure over the golf ball, say at one of the events that you won, you're in the final group or close to it, you're trying to hold on to that lead on that Sunday, and then compare that to the pressure you might feel when you're about to have a live fit and you're about to break down what's going on here, and you've got maybe shot tracer technology and you're following a group and you're seeing what's going on there, and they're like, three, two, one, Ewan, go.
it's actually all very, very similar in a way. It's not like tennis; you don't get a second serve.
He just finished his coffee. I don't know what was in it, but I know he is energized and ready to go for this conversation. Ewan Porter joins me. He is many things. He is a father, just had two twins, one set of twins, not two sets of twins. That would be quite a lot, but he's got three kids, two of them coming most recently. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about him as a former pro, a touring pro as a golfer, also a current commentator and founder of the Next Gen Amateur Tour. I'm Bryan Fenley. This is the Sports Media with a Human Touch podcast. Ewan, joining you all the way from, well, I'm in Los Angeles and you are in Australia. It is a pleasure to have you on. Your life has a lot going on. So thrilled to have you, and thanks for making the time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited about this.
This thing about being a dad and now having two more kids as part of the repertoire, how do you feel like, in a way, you're a caddy? And maybe not the touring pro, but you've had to take the role of a caddy in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it like that. You're right. Pardon the pun. Some may call it a porter as well. But yeah,
True.
look, it's going to be chaos. My wife gave birth to identical boys 8 weeks ago. They're still in the hospital, but they're doing okay. Just a few development issues that hopefully will sort of get over the line here fairly soon. But a 2.5-year-old boy at home. So first and foremost, when they're old enough, I've got my four ball sorted. I've got my group of four in the future if they decide to play golf. But yeah, chaotic times ahead. It's also very, very exciting. And you mentioned to me off air, your wife is 11 weeks pregnant, and with your first child, congratulations. And it's the greatest thing ever. I became a relatively old first time dad at the age of 40, and now here I am at 43 with three kids, and wouldn't have it any other way. It's just the greatest gift.
You told me also before we started that you were immersing yourself in all these manuals, these how to, what to expect as a father going into to being a dad. What, with all of that research that you did, still came as a surprise when the moment happened and you actually became a father?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and you're right. I was doing a lot of travel in the States for broadcasting, and was buying all these Dads for Dummies books and reading them on planes. And then when I got done with work at night, I was sitting in my hotel bed trying to figure out what it is that I needed to do. And what surprised me? It's a good question. What surprised me, and nothing is easy. But when I was reading these books, I was thinking, oh my God, fatherhood's impossible. How has anyone ever coped with being a parent? And when it actually happened, you figure it out pretty quickly. And we got into a routine very, very early on. And it was actually very, very crazy what we did with our firstborn Tommy. We moved from Australia to London when he was 2 months old, and we were there for 4 months. And we really didn't spend that much time in London in the 4 months. We were gallivanting all over Europe, predominantly for my work with the DP World Tour. I made a couple of trips in those 4 months from the UK to the US for work. But even with all of that going on, we had a routine down, and it wasn't that bad. Very early on, once we got into the flow of things, with sleeping, feeding, tummy time, getting him outside, it really wasn't that bad. I'm not sure how that's going to go with twins this time around because there's double everything. But yeah, I guess in a nutshell, when I was reading these books, I thought there's no chance I'm ever going to be able to be capable of being a dad. And then very, very quickly, it wasn't that bad. It was great actually.
You hinted something that I want to touch on in a little bit about what it would potentially be like when they're of age to play golf and what your approach is to them about whether you're going to be you have to play or whatnot. I want to get to that in just a moment, but you mentioned something about, there's so much that's we think is impossible, and I'm learning on the fly. This hasn't happened to me yet as a, father to be. But what has been most seemingly an impossible thing that you've gone through as a player on the golf course, as a pro, and something you had to deal with that seemed at the time almost impossible? You got through it, but it's those type of moments that stick with you.
Hitting me with the hard questions. Yeah, they're good questions. Gosh, look, I think very early on in my career, I turned professional when I was 19, and I only ever had eyes for the US and dreamed big and wanted to be on the PGA Tour. And I went to America very quickly and played the mini tours and didn't do very well and didn't have any money. And what money I did have, I lost by not playing well. And it was tough. And you know, I think there's a general consensus out there that if you haven't really made a major tour in your first 3 to 4 years as a professional, then it's time to look for a job and look elsewhere. And perhaps I was a little bit of a different case because I was only 19 when I turned pro. Everyone's turning pro at 19 now. When I did that in 2001, I was by far the youngest anywhere I went in the world. And I got my first win in Australia that was part of the Corn Ferry Tour at the age of 25. So that's 6 years into my professional career. And in those 6 years, I dabbled in playing in Asia. I played the mini tours in America, and I really, I was really, really enjoying it. But you know, I, I didn't expect that it would take that long to get onto a major tour. And I just thought by the age of 25, very naively, that I would be top 10 in the world and a PGA Tour winner and a millionaire. And obviously that wasn't the case. But I think overcoming all those obstacles and hurdles that are mainly mentally early on put me in good stead for not just for the rest of my playing career, but what I've done after that. It certainly built a whole lot of resilience, and I did a lot of the travel on my own as well. And it's something that I tell a lot of the young players coming through in Australia now is to really find something that's going to build their resilience, because there's a lot of really talented golfers all around the world. But what I see is them traveling as teams. Everything's paid for. Everything's sort of all of their travel is covered. Everything is very organized, and when they turn pro, it can all be very chaotic, a little bit like my life at the moment. And you need to adapt and learn on the fly. And nobody told me that before I turned pro, and I had to try and figure it out myself. And yeah, there's a hell of a lot of resilience. We're capable of a lot more than what we probably realize.
When you were in your 20s and you won that first Corn Ferry event and you turned pro when you're 19, as you said, and it was a few years after that when you won that first event, how easy is it during those years to get yourself caught up in comparing yourself to other golfers, and how easy that is, and how it doesn't really accomplish much, but it's so easy again to fall into that trap.
Again, great question. It's very, very easy to do that. So, for example, I grew up in a here in Australia. I grew up in a time frame playing junior golf and amateur golf where a lot of my compatriots went on to, in fact, so many of them went on to win on the Corn Ferry Tour, play and win on the PGA Tour. Guys like Stephen Bowditch, but Aaron Price, James Nitties, Andrew Buckle, Michael Sim. We all won on the Corn Ferry Tour. Most of us played PGA Tour, played in major championships. Stephen Bowditch played a President's Cup. Um, and coming from the other side of the world, that's an incredible accomplishment. And then you've got another player, Nick Flanagan, who won the US Amateur Championship. He went on to win 4 times on the Corn Ferry Tour. And I turned pro earlier than all of those players. But in that interim, in those 6 years, is when they started excelling at elite amateur level. And then when because they excelled at elite amateur level, they were given a little bit of a leg up when they turned professional and were given some, sponsorship or invitations into bigger events. So the fanfare was around them. So I would look at where they were in their career and perhaps start, second guessing myself. Did I turn pro too early? But the one thing that I've learned over time is that everyone has their own path and their own destiny, and you've just got to stick with it. And a great example of that is in 2017, I was lucky enough to commentate at the Walker Cup at LA Country Club. And that's one of probably the greatest US amateur side that's ever lived. So off the top of my head, Scotty Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, Will Zalatoris, Maverick McNeely, Cameron Champ, just incredible that team. And I'm probably missing a couple of players there too. But the number one amateur in the world at the time was Norman Zhong, who went to University of Oregon. I think he's from Northern California. He was only 18 years old. So amongst all those players that I just mentioned, and Bob McIntyre on the GB&I team, Norman was the standout player. And it took him 4 years or 5 years, I think, to reach the PGA Tour, maybe even 6 years to reach the PGA Tour, because he turned pro just after that. And that must have been really, really difficult for him to look at those other guys that he was beating and go, well, they're now major champions. I can't even get on the Corn Ferry Tour. But he stuck with it, stuck with his own path, and had a good team of people around him, which can't be overstated enough. Like, that's just, so important to have people telling you that you're on the right track. Just stick with it. Because I know for me that, I would have liked to have achieved more in my career, but certainly I think winning on the Corn Ferry Tour and spending a few years there, winning again, playing major championships, it took me a while, but I figured it out, and, most people do.
As you figure that out, how did your relationship with yourself change for the better over the years?
Uh, I would answer that by saying it really only, for me, it only changed when I stopped playing golf. I was able to step outside the bubble, and this insular bubble that I lived in for a decade, and realize that whilst I didn't achieve my ultimate dream of winning on the PGA Tour or being top 10 in the world, what I did achieve, 99% of people who turn professional would give their left arm for. I mean, like I said, multiple Corn Ferry Tour winner, played in 3 major championships. I'm so proud of that. It's coming where I come from. I come from a golf course that's in Sydney that's didn't have any practice facilities. It's an all right golf course, but I probably had no right in ever thinking that I would be top 10 in the world. But to achieve what I did, I'm very, very proud of. But when you're playing, I feel like nothing is ever good enough. It's hard to have that perspective that, hey, I just won. I really need to give myself a pat on the back and celebrate that, and take some time off and go back to the people that mean the most to me and really be proud of what I just achieved. Because when I was playing, I was always striving for something more. There was always something greater that I was trying to achieve. And like I said, it's only really since I've stepped away from it that I can be truly proud of it. But what I can say is everything I'm doing now, from broadcasting to, we'll touch on it, running the junior series. I'm able to now give myself a pat on the back along the way and realize the strides that I'm making in the moment.
It seems like you've come a bit full circle in this compassion that you've always had for yourself, but maybe more so now than when you were in the thick of things as a pro, as a touring pro, in growing in the sport. And I would think, Ewan, that there's a blessing and a curse to having this perfectionistic mindset as a player, because it's helping you in a way get really good and be locked in focus and win those events. But then there's the other side to it where it's so probably easy to go to the extreme to where you don't allow yourself to celebrate your wins, where it's that mindset that got you to win that event. But then when you win the event,
Mm-hmm.
it's not celebrated. And when would you allow yourself, even if it was afterwards, to some extent, maybe back home with your family, to sort of let your guard down and experience? How often would that come, or how seldom would that come, where you would say to yourself, yeah, I just won this event and there were a lot of great golfers that were a part of it, even when it might be so easy to just move past it and say it's never enough, or we got to keep moving and no more doting on what just happened.
Yeah, well, coincidentally, before I went to bed last night, the last page that I read of a current book that I'm reading by a good friend of mine, I'll give him a plug for the book, Evan Priest. He's written a book called Together We Roared with Steve Williams about his years with caddying for Tiger. And it's been number one on the charts for, or certainly top five in the charts for the last few months since he released it. But the page that I read last night, Tiger just won the 2000 Open Championship at St Andrews at the age of 24 to complete the Grand Slam. And that evening, he was on a private jet. Steve was on a private jet with Tiger from Scotland back to Orlando. And David Duval, who he played alongside that last round, Stuart Appleby, and one other player were on that private jet. And he said Tiger maybe once mentioned the career Grand Slam. On the flight, he said he was more interested in breaking the scoring record at St Andrews, which was 18 under par at the time, and Tiger finished 19 under par. That meant that meant more to him, but he said there really wasn't much celebrating because there was always, he wanted to break Jack's record. There was always something else to accomplish. And when you sit back and look at that, I actually wonder whether, I mean, Tiger won 80, well, he's won 82 events. I wonder just how much he has really sat back and given himself a pat, because if you achieve the Grand Slam at the home of golf, that's about as good as it gets in the game. That is incredible. Look at Rory this year when he won at Augusta. I'm pretty sure Rory allowed himself to celebrate a little bit. And I think having gone through fought through the adversity and the obstacles that he had around Augusta National, that probably, helped with that the emotion getting it over the line. But it's for Tiger, whether it's Tiger or whether it's myself winning on the Corn Ferry Tour, it's all relative in a way. I think it's important. It's very important to have a good team of people around you to help guide you and help give you a little bit of perspective on the real world too. Because certainly when I won my first and even my second Corn Ferry event, as I said, I was striving for bigger things in the game, whilst probably so many people were looking at me going, wow, I wish I was Ewan Porter and winning on the Corn Ferry Tour. But for me, I didn't think that. I thought I've got to shoot for the stars still. So, I wish I had my 43-year-old brain on the 25-year-old shoulders. But like I said, I'm very, very proud now of what I achieved.
If you were in that private plane back in 2000 with them, what do you think you would have said to Tiger, knowing that he didn't spend a lot of time talking about, as you said from reading the book, about this career Grand Slam that he had pulled off, and how little that was of discussion?
I don't think anything would have mattered to Tiger at the time. He was from the age of 6 or 7. He was hell bent on reaching Jack's 18 career majors total, and perhaps getting his fourth major championship win in his eyes was, I'm not even a quarter of the way there. I've got a long way to go. So perhaps it doesn't feel that great. I don't know. I'm not sure I would have ever had the guts to say to Tiger, "Wake up to yourself. What you've just done is most would ever, most would dream of achieving what just one major championship." But hey, I mean, it's Tiger, built different. What can you say? I'm sure he probably now. It'd actually be a really good conversation. What we're talking about right now, I wonder whether Tiger reflects on that type of thing, because he's 50 in December, and that was half his lifetime ago that he achieved that. I wonder if he sits back and thinks, would have been nice to celebrate a few of those victories a little bit more.
I think he probably does, especially with his kids now
Yeah,
and them, and Charlie and growing up and just seeing what it's like being a father and watching Charlie play. I think having the father background now for him, I think maybe alters his perspective slightly. Like, I don't want to speak for him, but I would think that that definitely would, and I know you would speak to that as well as being a father. And how does it make you think about this next gen? Well, we're going to get into that. Your junior series coming up, Next Gen Amateur Tour, which you're the founder of. But the way in which you want to go about when that moment comes to share your love of golf with your own kids, and what approach you will go about in doing that.
yeah, it's something that I've thought about for quite a while, and I was lucky that I played a whole array of different sports growing up before I figured out golf was the one that I wanted to pursue. And my parents were terrific. They supported me in whatever I wanted to do. I did athletics or track and field for close to 10 years. I played rugby for a few years, cricket, soccer, and enjoyed them all, loved them all. The golf was the one I ultimately chose, and whatever way I went, my parents were always going to be very supportive, and that's something that I want to pass down to my children. But probably more than that, I think one thing that's been very eye-opening to me over the last 6 years of running the Next Gen Amateur Tour is 99% of the parents are fantastic. There's always a minority, and it is 1%. There's always a minority that I look at and I say, please just let the kids be kids and enjoy themselves, because who cares if they're not the best, or who cares if they don't have their best round, or they three putt a hole, or they leave a shot in a bunker. They're kids. They're out here doing what they enjoy, and let them be that way. And that's actually probably been a learning curve for me, in that whatever pursuit my children want to have, my 2.5-year-old son at the moment loves dancing. He certainly didn't get any of that talent from his dad. And whatever pursuit they choose, I am just going to back them 100%. And most importantly, make sure they enjoy it and they have fun, because pushing kids to any extreme is, I think is fraught with danger. And if they choose golf, fantastic. It's a great sport. It's a sport for life. It's a sport where you can network. It's a sport you can play with friends. Yes, I know all too well the difficulty of playing professional golf if they were ever to be that talented. But like I said, fun is the number one priority.
If one of them decided to go the pro route down the road, mentally, what kind of headspace would you be? I can't have, that would be nerve-wracking, I would think, to some extent.
Yes, it would. I'm not going to lie there, but again, all I can do is provide them with the experiences that I've had, and the knowledge that I gained in my career, and make sure that they have a good team of people around them. And I don't think that I would ever try and coach my kids. I would like to leave that to someone else. I wouldn't want to sort of let that get too ingrained in the father son relationship. But yeah, it's just giving them any valuable insights that I have. If they want my advice, I'll provide it for them. But first and foremost, it just needs to be fun. It needs to be enjoyable, and yeah, make sure they have a clear vision of what they're doing.
What you are doing since 2019, as you talked about, as the founder of the Next Gen Amateur Tour, is creating that fun and that enjoyment for so many kids and juniors that are on the rise and really dedicated to the sport of golf. What does putting this league together, what does that satisfy for you? What do you get most out of putting this out there?
Mm. Well, first of all, it's far more rewarding providing the playing opportunities and the pathways for young players than anything I've ever done for myself. And whilst I'm super proud of what I've achieved in my career, it's that's almost from a we've all got our own goals, and when you achieve them, you should be proud. And but it almost feels like that's selfish compared to what I'm doing now because I'm doing something for a greater cause that's hopefully sustainable for a long time to come. And the Next Gen Amateur Tour, it all began, as you said, back in 2019. I wanted to honor my father's legacy, who passed away in 2018, and I wanted to do something to honor him, and I wanted to do something in the junior golf space. I wasn't really sure how to go about it, and when I put this tournament together, it began as just a 2-day tournament in Sydney, and we had a terrific field. In fact, we had Elvis Smiley, who's now playing on the DP World Tour, and Cassie Porter, who no relation, she's playing on the LPGA Tour, and another girl who's won on the Korean Ladies Tour this year. And I just I guess I realized when COVID hit just a few months after that event, I realized there was an opportunity to probably do a little bit more with this rather than just a 2-day tournament. And in the space of the last 5 years, we've grown to now we've hosted nearly or over 100 events. We have 15 events between Australia and New Zealand every year. These are all 54-hole World Amateur Golf Ranking events. We have a handful of qualifiers up in Asia. It all culminates in a season-ending World Final down in Melbourne, just outside of Melbourne. And coincidentally, it's at the golf course this year that I had my first win at Nunar Links in 2008. But just being able to provide these players with playing opportunities. Last year we had 16 professional tournament invitations across 5 different tours on offer for our players, in addition to Adidas Titleist scholarships, Chief Nutrition scholarships. It's just wonderful to see the journey of these players. We've got 2 or 3 kids right now who I think are going to be stars. One of them already has a start in the Canadian Open next year, Declan O'Donovan. He just won the Canadian Amateur Championship. We've had so many. We've probably had almost 50% of our players over the last 2 or 3 years go off to college in the US and on some type of scholarship. And I just love being a part of their journey. It's so rewarding.
Rewarding as well has to be the feeling of this series because of who it honors, as you talked
Mm-hmm.
about your dad, and now that you are in the role of being a father yourself, when most might you hear your father's voice in you being a dad now, when you're looking at your kids and how that might play itself out?
Yeah, I think it's I think that's really just day to day around the house. There's actually a lot of times that I catch myself around the house saying something or doing something, and I go, oh, that was my dad's name was Norm, so I think that was very Norm what I just said or what I just did. But when I'm at these next gen events, um, I just picture my dad when he was walking around with me or caddying for me as a junior golfer, and quite often he would go there at the tournament to watch me or caddy for me, and he'd end up helping out the event in some capacity. It might be he'd caddy for me, and then he'd help with scoring or the presentations in the clubhouse after it. And I think that desire to just help out has probably translated to me wanting to assist and grow and boost the profile of these players and the events and junior golf in not just Australia but across the Asia Pacific region.
When you would finish rounds and your dad was there helping you out and helping out tournaments, as you said, how in depth would you both maybe relive a round that you played as to what he has to say and then taking what he said, some of it moving forward, some of it saying, "All right, Dad, I got it, I got it."
um, Probably much to my dad's dismay. I think it was every single time. I remember car rides home, and in fact, I'll throw my mother in here as well. I think they heard about, if they weren't there, they heard about every single shot of every round that I had just played, and if Dad had caddied for me or Mum had walked around, we dissected it all. And obviously, my mum didn't play golf, but Dad was about an 8 or 10 handicap, so he was handy, he was good. Um, and he knew about the game. So yeah, I think it was just nice to be able to bounce some things off my dad. It might have been one or two shots during the round that I played well or played poorly, and Dad would give his insights into what he thought. And I think as a 12, 13, 14 year old, I worshipped my dad certainly as a person and a golfer as well. And any advice that he gave, I was willing to listen to.
In getting to know you, I can definitely hear how his spirit is immortalized through you and you carrying on what he bestowed upon you. You mentioned how you would break down every shot. To dive into those shot instincts even further, what was the longest time you ever spent ruminating over a prior shot and one that was the hardest to let go of and just move forward from, be it around as an amateur, as a pro?
Well, at the end of 2007, so I turned pro at the end of 2001. At the end of 2007, I had my best ever stretch of golf. At the end of the season in Australia, we played from memory. We played the what did we play? We played the Australian Masters, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore. But the Australian Masters was a DP World Tour event. Then we played the New Zealand Open, which again was a DP World Tour event, Australian PGA Championship, and then the last event before Christmas was the Australian Open Championship. The Australian Masters, I think I was top 10 playing the last hole of the tournament, made a double bogey, so I finished about 23rd or something. Went over to New Zealand. I was third going into the final round. I was in the second last group. Didn't have a terrible round, but I had a pretty poor round and again dropped back to about 20th. The Australian PGA Championship, I played okay, finished 30th or something. And then the Australian Open, I had the last hole was a par five and I had to make an eagle to force a playoff. Obviously, had a great week and I missed about a 4 or 5 foot birdie putt. And I think I still collected about 50 grand or 60 grand or something for finishing fifth or sixth. But it cost me about 50 or 60 grand missing that putt on the last hole. And I didn't have another tournament because of the Christmas, New Year's break. There was no more tournament for about 4 or 5 weeks. And I ruminated on that missed putt right through Christmas and New Year's. And thankfully, more than the ruminating on the putt, I had built so much confidence in my game that I could compete at that level that straight after the New Year's break, I first of all I qualified for my second Open Championship at Royal Birkdale, and then straight after that I won at Moonar Links. And yes, which was the Corn Ferry Tour event, and whilst I'd had some setbacks along the way, I think sometimes you've got to go through those to understand how to deal with certain pressures in tournaments. And it's funny because between that first and second win, I did have a third place finish in Boise, in Idaho. But outside of that, I really didn't contend much in a tournament. But what I'd learned from winning that tournament in 2008 really, really helped me when I won my second tournament in 2010, going head to head with guys like Johnny Vegas and Keegan Bradley. And yeah, I'd build up, like I said, I'd build up a certain resilience in those tournaments. But that Australian Open, just going back to that missed putt on the final hole, whilst I was ruminating on that missed putt, when I look back over the break and over that Christmas New Year's break, and I saw the leaderboard, and I saw that, I tied with Mark Leishman and Aaron Baddeley, and I'd finished ahead of Ryan Moore, who'd won several times on the PGA Tour, and Adam Scott, Jeff Ogilvy, who were in the prime of their careers. I thought, you know, maybe I am good enough. Maybe I am. And yeah, look, I carried it forward, and no question after that, I started to hit my strides more.
You're hitting your stride when it comes to broadcasting, and you've worked with so many different pro tours around the world. What's the difference in the pressure over the golf ball, say, at one of the events that you won, you're in the final group or close to it, you're trying to hold on to that lead on that Sunday, and then compare that to the pressure you might feel when you're about to have a live fit and you're about to break down what's going on here, and you've got maybe shot tracer technology and you're following a group and you're seeing what's going on there, and they're like, three, two, one, Ewan, go.
Yep, yep. It's actually all very, very similar in a way. It's not like tennis; you don't get a second serve. Uh, with golf, you hit one out of bounds. That's bad luck. You're hitting three off the tee when you're broadcasting. If you go, you look like an idiot. You've got to be, you've got to be prepared. You've got to be ready to go, and it's something that I've prided myself on over the years. Whether it's been in Europe, the US, the LPGA Tour here in Australia, I don't. Doesn't matter to me if it's a major championship or a smaller event here in Australia. They're all prepared for it in the same capacity, and I want to make sure that I do the best job possible, and probably like almost akin to being a professional golfer. It doesn't really matter where you're playing. You want to play your best all the time, but the adrenaline rush and the nerves that you get from doing the live hit, and like I've been, gosh, I've been so lucky that I have interviewed Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson, Steve Stricker when he won the US Senior Open Championship, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy. I've interviewed Jordan Spieth, Dustin Johnson, pretty much everyone except Tiger. Actually, that's one that I would love to have the opportunity to sit down and do an interview with Tiger. But you absolutely have to be ready, and probably this almost feels like a role reversal because I've been the one asking the questions for the last few years, and what's different about me answering now is I'm trying to elaborate and probably to the point of rambling. When
No,
you're doing broadcast, no, when you're broadcasting, as you know, you've really got to keep it relatively succinct. And even 8 years into it, 8 or 9 years into the broadcasting now, I'm still learning things and still catch myself at times not being as succinct as I should be, or rambling on the question too much rather than keeping it short and sweet. So I love it. I hope that I do more and more in the future. It's difficult that yes, I'm living in Australia, so it's the travel for to broadcast in the US or Europe is a lot, and it's certainly harder now with three kids. But it keeps me immersed in the game and provides me with the energy that I experienced, I guess, when I was playing.
I love it. I got two more for you, and I wanted to ask you about the difference in the analysis of your swing compared to what is percolating inside of your mind when you're analyzing, you go back and watch one of your broadcasts, and what that might be like.
Well, that's funny because the amount of times that I will do a live analysis of a golf swing or a breakdown of a golf swing, and the viewer probably wouldn't know this, but I'm talking about, I don't know, Jason Day's golf swing. I'm talking about his golf swing, and as I'm describing it, maybe a little steep at the top, or he's bringing it down a little, a little too shallow, or whatever. I'm describing the golf swing, and I'm thinking in my mind as I'm saying it, God, I wish I did this, or I wish I knew that when I was playing. And probably the funniest one I ever did was at the Australian PGA Championship. I think it was back in 2017 or 2018. Adam Scott had played in the morning, and then he came into the commentary box as a guest for about half an hour in the afternoon, and they were showing highlights of his round. Adam's sitting right next to me, and they made me break down his golf swing right with Adam Scott sitting right next to me. I actually, from memory, I didn't even dissect it. I just said, "You've got to be joking. I've got Adam right next to me, who is a mate. He has the best golf swing in the world. What on earth am I going to say? You've got someone who'd never reached the top 200 in the world dissecting a Masters champion and former world number one swing. It's perfect. I'm just leaving it at that." And Adam was happy with that. He's like, "Oh, if it was perfect, I would hit every shot straight." So he was modest about it. But in that situation with him sitting next to me, I wasn't game enough to to say anything.
Well, I would imagine, yeah, you'd be afraid. Not that there were any major things off that swing to critique, but just to be in his presence. It's kind of like you listen to analysts during television broadcasts of not just necessarily golf, but in other sports, and they are, heavily critical and maybe justifiably so. And you say to yourself, would you say that exact same thing if that person you were criticizing was in the same room as you? And usually the answer is no. Final question from me is, you hinted at this. You listed all the people, pro golfers over the years, the big ones that you've had a chance to interview. I'm not going if, I'm going when you get to talk to Tiger Woods. What potentially would you want to ask him in an interview with him? I know that was the one interview of a player that you still haven't done everybody else, but that when that happens, what are you going to ask him?
Probably not too dissimilar to everything we discussed, and I think we touched on it before. You're almost 50 now. When we do chat, we'll call it when we do chat. He probably will be 50. He probably will be 50 years old. Do you reflect on your career now with more pride than whilst you were in your prime? And I guess secondly, I'd want to know about his journey with Charlie. I really would like to know about his golf journey with Charlie, because Charlie was maybe unfairly touted as the next Tiger from the age of 11 or 12. And I mean, we've all seen Charlie play. He is excellent. He is brilliant, but he's also not top 10 in his age group in the United States, let alone globally. So I wonder how much we've all heard about Tiger's relationship with his father. And I think, he was very close with his father, but his father was very demanding of his son. What I want to know whether Tiger has instilled similar traits into Charlie, or whether he's let Charlie just be himself and enjoy the journey and choose whatever he wanted to do. I think I would be more interested in Tiger's parenthood journey than about his golf, because I think we're all pretty familiar with Tiger and his golf accomplishments. So I want to get more personal and intimate with Tiger.
I hope we did that.
With the questions, that is.
Yeah. I think we all assume that. But yes, the thing about it is what you said is exactly what I love, and what I was hoping to do in this conversation with you is that a lot of people know you as a golfer, but I want to hear more about what else you are. And we got there in a big way. And I agree. I think Tiger actually, he just looks happier now watching his kid than maybe even winning a major. Like because of where he is and maybe this added perspective he has on his life. And I know that when that happens, that interview with Tiger, you better let me know, because I want to be one of the first to check that out. Ewan Porter with me, founder of Next Gen Amateur Tour, former touring pro. He is a father of three. He is a broadcaster. We touched on a lot of different things, a lot of fun, going a lot of different places. Ewan, this was really, really enjoyable. Thanks for doing this.
No, thanks for having me on anytime, Bryan. Much appreciated. And I will say, when you mention all those things, when you say father of three, that means much more than anything else. So thank you.